Hi, I'm Ann Althouse out here in Madison, Wisconsin at the University of Wisconsin Law School and on the blog Althouse. And with me today, I think he's in position now, is the greatest blogger of all time, Glenn Reynolds, Instapundit. Welcome to the show,
Hi, it's great
Glenn.
to be here.
So, and you're at the University of Tennessee, so we're both law professors, and we're pretty excited because it's the dawn of the rule of law professors in America, right?
That's right. There must be a Greek word for that. I don't know. But I actually had a blog post a while back on this saying that, people look back in the 90s as this golden age, and that was actually the rule of professors because, of course, not only was Bill Clinton a law professor, Hillary was a former law professor. Over in Congress, you had a bunch of professors. You had Newt Gingrich. You had Dick Armey. Was Phil Graham? Wasn't he a professor of some sort? So there were a bunch of professors. So I guess this is in some sense a return to the natural order of things. And anybody who has never been to a faculty meeting will believe what I'm saying, but anyone who has been to a faculty meeting will not.
Well, do you think that law professors will make good tend to, as a category, make good? Most people are talking about how
I think
we've got our first black president. We've got a black president, but we've gotten snagged on this subject of we've got a law professor president. But of course, Bill Clinton was a law professor president also, and a lot of good it did him.
Well, I probably did do him some good. I think law professors have a lot of rhetorical and reasoning skills. I think their weaknesses are sometimes they have trouble actually coming to a decision. They're very good at sort of exploring all sides of an issue and drawing out people's arguments and everything. But, Clinton's flaw, they said, was that it was often hard to get him to quit talking and make a decision, and we'll see if that's Obama's problem as well.
Yeah, Obama seems to be more professorial than Clinton ever was. I think he's more of a law professor mentality, but I was thinking of that in a positive way, that he would be somebody who would discern principles and would be coherent about solving problems with principles and based on the facts and put things together coherently. And then he'd be good at explaining it with rhetorical flourish and persuasion, and that it would be pretty. It would have some passion to it, but would generally be sensible and pragmatic, and that would work fairly well. But I do know a lot of law professors that I would never trust with any kind of power.
That's right. Just put a C-SPAN camera in the average faculty meeting, and you could probably destroy the prospects of electing any law professors to much of anything.
When I saw a lot of the attacks on Obama were about his associations with various characters. Some of them were professors, and my view of that was, well, these are the kind of people that are around me all the time. These people with left-wing perceptions of things, and many of the things that were treated as being really alarmingly out of the mainstream are things that I feel like I hear among law professors all the time, and they're just completely normal. So, one of the reasons I was able to support Obama was that he didn't really seem out of the mainstream to me. He seemed to be a very sensible person and much less radical than all sorts of intelligent, respected people that I see all the time. But that's out here in Madison.
It's all your standard of comparison, I guess.
With your points of reference,
Well, let's go to that. You got some flack from your readers, I think, for after your vow of cruel neutrality eventually coming out for Obama. Well, how did that work out?
I said all along when I took a vow of cruel neutrality that I intended to be balanced, to call them as I see them, to say the good and the bad for both candidates, and to be neutral, but also cruelly neutral, because I want to be an interesting writer. But I only promised to do it at least through September, so I only started to reveal that I was probably going to vote for Obama, and I kept raising the percentage of the likelihood. And I wasn't lying; those were the real percentages. I was giving McCain his chance. But I only started to reveal that in October, so I kept my vow. People are still after me for violating my vow, but I kept my vow. And the whole point of the vow was to be able to make good perceptions and write a good blog, which is my number one concern. But some people are... I put up a poll today. I don't know if you saw the poll I just put up in preparation for this. But it has a bunch of options. How did you feel about my revelation that I was voting for Obama? And one of them was I was disgusted, and one of them was whatever you do, you suck. But those two negative choices are 17% total, and the biggest option is I knew it all along, so nothing changed, 41%. And I got 21% agreeing to whatever you do, I love you, which is what I really want. But
that's pretty good, yeah.
So actually, it's not that, but you got to take into account that some people left and stopped reading, so they're not here this morning to answer the poll, making it more unscientific than the usual web poll. But I did have some people saying that they were disgusted. And they were going away. Some said they would come back after the election, that they just couldn't stand it, that the idea that I would vote for Obama, I was accused of drinking the Kool-Aid. The idea that I would actually decide based on all of the factors to be for Obama instead of McCain. They didn't want to view it that way. At least some people wanted to say, well, I've just fallen for it. I've drunk the Kool-Aid, and also that I've just been true to my class, which is law professors. That here I am, or that I'm just doing this so that the people who I have to live with won't hate me. So I'm just being. It's just self-defensive, and it's a lack of courage. Although it took some courage, I think, to reveal it on my blog, where I obviously am considered a right-wing blog or whatever because of who links to me and so forth. And there's just the phenomenon of where I've come to be favored and disfavored in the blogosphere. I'm viewed as if I'm right-wing, but there was no reason to really ever think that. But to say, I'm going to vote for Obama, all the Obama types are people who would tend to not read me and to dislike me anyway. And then the people who I needed to be my readers, I was slapping them in the face. So that was a kind of a dangerous move.
Well, I think that what you're going to see, actually, is a lot of reshuffling of the left and right-wing stuff, because for the last almost 8 years, what people think of as left and right has really been oriented around a single thing, which is sort of the national security axis.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what got me characterized, I think, as a right-wing blogger more than anything else. But
so you don't consider yourself a right-wing blogger?
No, I mean, I'm a libertarian, but I was looking over at the corner, watching Maggie Gallagher crow about the California and Florida marriage amendments passing, and that's not my shtick. So I don't know. I mean, people didn't think of me as much of a conservative before the war, and so it's always seemed a little odd to me, but. It got to where that was a synonym for supporting the war, and all definitions are permitted to the definer, as they say.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad to see that go away.
Yeah, but the thing that I found oddly, I mean, I didn't take a vow of cruel neutrality.
Why not? Well, I mean, because you don't talk about your feelings the way I do. Is that? I mean, you didn't really have to. You were already in that position, and you stayed there.
Maybe that's right. But the funny thing is, I did get some email and not a huge amount, but I published a couple of them where I was getting bashed for people who said I was a shill for Obama, but I just didn't have the courage to come out and declare for him. But in fact, I was accused of loyalty to my class of lawyers and law professors for not bashing him hard enough. And I thought I was fairly critical of Obama. I mean, if I had a criticism of Obama, I posted it, and I didn't think that I was cutting him any slack. However, I do sort of not yell that much, and I think when people get revved up, not yelling is enough to make them kind of suspicious of where you fit in. But I don't know. I mean, were you able to tell from reading my blog sort of where I came down? I mean, it seemed to me it was pretty obvious. But
well, I think you were linking in a way that was favorable to McCain. I think if someone did an empirical study, they would see the pattern. And so I think readers probably got the feeling that you were favorable to McCain because of the way you were linking. But you very rarely talk about how you personally feel, although we feel like we can tell. Now, that might get more readers because people, once they decide they like you, may feel like you're with them no matter what you do, and it would take a lot to make them shift to say, oh, no, he's actually on the other side. So I think you were for McCain, right?
I wound up voting for McCain. I did put a poll up. I was trying to decide whether to vote for McCain or Bob Barr.
Yeah,
and my thinking had been, if Tennessee wasn't in play, then I might as well vote for Barr. And then it occurred to me, I said, well, the truth is, if Tennessee is in play, McCain's so doomed that I still might as well vote for Barr. And so I put up a poll about that, and I actually went into the booth not quite sure what I was going to do, but I think I'd been reading Andrew Sullivan or something that day, so I just voted for McCain. And, so there I was. And, of course, my vote didn't make any difference because McCain took Tennessee very handily. And that was sort of one reason that was a hard choice is, as Republicans go, I'm McCain, I think I like him as a man. I think he's a good person. And we interviewed him a couple of times for our podcast, and he was very likable. You can see why journalists like him. But he's a big government conservative. He did finally, at the very end of his campaign, start talking sort of free markets and sounding vaguely libertarian on the economy. But he's never been good on that. And he's very good on the war. But aside from that, not really. And then Bob Barr is about as good a libertarian as John McCain is a Republican. He was a fairly dubious libertarian credentials, having been a big drug warrior and all. And, in fact, did not do that well. I think the take on Reason was that, well, he did do better than Michael Badnarik, and that's about all they could say. So that candidacy was kind of weak. So the upshot was, I really do worry about Obama, and I am concerned he's going to be hit on by a whole bunch of interest groups who are going to demand a lot, and that he's going to have a hard time saying no. Paradoxically for him, I think having the Republicans maintain enough people to keep a filibuster is probably a good thing. I think it probably will give him a chance to resist some of these demands from his constituencies. But I'm a little concerned. If he had run the kind of campaign that the early part of his campaign symbolized, and that his really very nice acceptance speech last night symbolized, I would have felt better about him. There was a lot of sort of thuggish behavior toward critics and stuff, and the fundraising stuff that I didn't like, and that kind of gave me a bad feeling about him. And we'll just have to see whether that translates into an Obama administration now or not. I mean, Mark Tapscott emailed me that I criticized him for saying we were going to get Caracas on the Potomac, and he emailed me saying, "I'll bet you $10 I'm right." And then he said, "Of course, if I'm right, it'll only be worth 25 cents, and we'll both be in re-education camps." So I think he's wrong.
I got the feeling I couldn't trust this idea of standing up to the Democratic Congress was really important to me, but I didn't feel like McCain would do that. I felt like McCain had always been about reaching across the aisle and wanting the Democrats to love him. And I actually felt that, once the national security interests became secondary, because I think we essentially won the war, and I voted against Kerry in 2004 because I thought he was going to lose the war for us, and that was the overwhelming issue then. So once that wasn't the main issue, and it's about standing up to the Democratic Congress on all of these various economic questions and immigration issues and things like that, I felt that Obama would actually be the stronger man, that he would be able to be his own man. He wouldn't need to make overtures to the Democrats to get them to love him, that he would need to stand for something, and that his inclination is to stand for representing the interests of the country, perhaps in a way that he would define with his more coherent style of thinking, whereas McCain just struck me as completely erratic on all kinds of issues other than national security, and his admission early on that he didn't know anything about economics. I'm still actually more angry about that than anything else that anybody said practically in the whole campaign, because, he's over 70. He's been making laws that have affected us for years, and he doesn't understand economics? That's outrageous.
Well, that makes him fit in with the rest of Congress, I'm afraid. But you're not the only one to feel that way. In fact, what's interesting is, among the sort of libertarian crowd who has supported the Bush administration on national security, there is not nearly as much wailing and gnashing of teeth over the election. In fact, Perry de Havilland, who I believe is actually one of those de Havillands, who publishes over at Samizdat, the British libertarian blog, was remarking that very thing, that he thinks that McCain's instincts toward bipartisanship and such would probably have made him a pushover for the Senate Democrats anyway, and House Democrats anyway, and there wouldn't be a lot of accountability. This way, there's accountability, and he thinks it's actually better. And we'll find out, won't we? Let's hope it all works out. Every time you have an election, you're rolling the dice, and my experience has been the guy you like is always a disappointment to some degree, and the guy you don't like, if they get in, is usually not as bad as you feared. So,
Yeah, you had a nice piece in Forbes yesterday, I guess it was, about trying to get everyone to calm down and to take the outcome in stride as the will of the people. And
the response to that was funny because, a lot of bloggers linked to it and liked it, and I got some favorable email. But if you read the comments on the Forbes site, most of them basically say, "Are you kidding? Those bastards! There's no way!" And actually one of the bloggers here at the Knoxville News Sentinel linked to that piece and quoted some of it. And the comments on his post were all full of people saying, "Are you kidding? Those bastards? No way!" So, I don't think my effort to spread oil on the troubled waters is probably going to do much good, but I figured it was worth a try. And, if you were to read my blog over the last 8 years, I'm sure I've written stuff I probably wouldn't want to have, but I've tried to stay fairly calm, and I think it's better for the most part when people do, but that's my temperament. It's not everybody's.
So you don't think we're going to get Obama derangement syndrome?
Oh, I think we will. I'm already seeing signs of it. Maybe there'll be less of it. One thing I do think you see as a distinction between some parts of the left and the right is that the old notion that the personal is political kind of flips over, and the political becomes personal. And I think that you have some of that on the right, but a good deal less. I think there are fewer people on the right for whom politics is their religion, maybe because there are more people on the right who actually have a religion as their religion. But whatever it is, I think there's a little less of that. But we saw plenty of Clinton derangement syndrome, and we'll probably see plenty of Obama derangement syndrome.
Do you think that it's that there's less of it on the right, or that on the left, the people who are in the derangement mode are more seem more interwoven with the mainstream regular Democrats, whereas on the conservative side, there seem to be some rather cool-headed conservatives, and that the real extreme seems a little more marginalized. I don't even know if that's true, because I'm thinking about Rush Limbaugh.
Yeah, I think that conservatives have known that anything they said that the media could blow up and use against them would be blown up and used against them. So they've watched their language and their approach and tried to seem less scary. Whereas I think people on the left generally figure the media will cover for them or present their stuff in a more favorable way, so they just don't have to be as careful. And I think that's basically true.
Yeah.
And so I think that sets the bounds of discourse differently on each side.
Also on the left, I think, speaking as a baby boomer who, I went to college in 1969, and I really had the feeling that, this feeling that you could be like William Ayres or a real extreme, you could think it was actually glamorous to be a member of the Weather Underground, or that a revolution would come and you could have your Che t-shirt and all of these sorts of things. That there was a sort of a glamour to being ridiculously left-wing, and it somehow didn't count. It was like a charming artistic quality that you might have, or it just didn't have the ugliness to it that being an extremist on the right would have. There was no cachet to that in American culture, and so it's easier to be out and open about expressing this kind of left type of anger in American culture. The celebrities do it, and it's just been part of the culture for 40 years or 30 years.
I think that's right. I think that stuff that if you see the same kind of talk from somebody on the right that you routinely see from somebody on the left, it just plays differently because people aren't used to seeing it, and they're more threatened by it. Maybe partly they're more threatened by it because they figure people on the right have more guns or something. I don't know, but I really think it's actually at a more basic level than that, of just what people are used to seeing, because the familiar is always less threatening.
But it's also just a process of socialization. I mean, if you express right-wing extreme ideas, you'll be unpopular, you'll be shot down, you'll be accused of being a racist, or you'll get some nasty pushback. Whereas you can just flow along for years and years and say extreme left-wing things in certain environments, and everyone will think you're just fine.
But now, if you go steal somebody's McCain yard signs out of their yard, you could lose your teaching job at the college. Is that right?
Yeah.
Was that up your way?
Yeah, I did. Where was he? Oh, St. Olave's. Yeah, that's a college up around here. So a lot of our law students here at University of Wisconsin graduate from St. Olave's. It's a nice little college. But he was a visiting professor. I forget what his name is. I have it on my blog somewhere. But he didn't just steal McCain signs, but he wrote a Huffington Post piece bragging about what a fine person he was for exercising his free speech and how, powerful he felt as he was pulling the signs up out of the ground, like he was some kind of a culture hero. And, that he could feel that way and be someone who was respected enough to be a visiting professor at St. Olave's, and that he could think that he could write an article making him about himself. Self-congratulation shouldn't really work that well anyway, but that he thought he could write that and that everything would be fine. I mean, he's confessing to a crime online, and that he, I mean, how, maybe he did it on purpose and he wanted to get famous and he's willing to pay the price, but it just seems like a kind of madness to think, to believe that you've done something to your credit and it's just fine.
Well, that sort of does go to the differential point right there. I mean, I think that he probably thought that because he had probably bragged in other settings about doing stuff or talked about it and gotten positive reinforcement for it, and just didn't really think that it was anything to be ashamed of. And there is some talk on the right of sort of adopting the in-your-face tactics of the left and trying to sort of level the playing field there. And I don't know. I don't know whether you'll see that. It's certainly, I don't look forward to further coarsening of political discourse. But it is true that you set up incentives, and if you demonstrate to people that sort of over-the-top behavior intimidates your critics and does good, then you will be imitated. And I think that's we'll see. We didn't really see that in the Clinton years too much, but we saw some of it, and we may see it again. Stay tuned.
All of this seems to be evidence of childishness. That visiting professor was saying he felt immature, but it was somehow good anyway. And a lot of this derangement syndrome type of speech seems to be very childish. And there was something kind of childish, boyish about Bush, and obviously about Clinton. And I would just like and all of the half of the bloggers seem to be operating in a pretty immature mode. Not that I never do some immature things, because I do. And, being a law professor, it's particularly bad, I'm told frequently. But, you, a law professor, is one of the common things people say to me. But I would like to think that maybe the adults have arrived. And that one thing about Obama, even though he was much younger than McCain, and I've kind of done the math, and McCain is about as much older than me as Obama is younger than me, so I feel like I'm in the middle generation-wise between the two. And I love the idea that the adults have arrived, and it's this young guy, that he really is a mature person. He didn't stoop, he didn't put out the ugly ads, he didn't race bait, he stayed above it all, he tried to be, maybe he didn't do it perfectly, but I think he was a model of adulthood, of manhood, that could take us into a new phase. And, speaking of new phases, I think we should get some credit for not mentioning yet that Obama's the first black president, and that's quite the thing. What do you think of that?
Well, he is, one of his appeals to a lot of people is his cool manner. And I think that does come as a relief after a lot of not so cool political characters. But you're right, he's the first black president, and that's a big deal. And I think it's a bigger deal to people who are a little older than me. I experienced the civil rights era at secondhand. My dad marched at Selma, but I was in preschool, and I actually went to some civil rights marches with my dad when I was a kid. But I was one of them was involving Louise Gay Hicks, which only people who are a lot older than me are likely to remember. But it was always something my dad did, really. And by the time I was old enough to be approaching adulthood, it was kind of old news. But nonetheless, it's a very big deal. And I have to say, talking to some people who are so unhappy about Obama, I voted for the other guy. But I have to say one thing that sort of tempered my judgment is, and you may have seen this, my black law students just seem so happy about it. And it means a lot to them, and you can't. You'd have to have a heart of stone not to be moved by that to some degree.
It's touching to see all the. It's very inspiring to see all the happiness. You just feel happy to see people happy, regardless of whether you wanted the outcome or not.
That's right, and I have to say, and this I had a post on not this election cycle, one of the early ones, but using an analogy that you and I guess Barack Obama might appreciate, and maybe not a lot of other people, but it's the faculty hiring analogy, which is every year we go in, we're hiring members of the faculty, and I always have the people I think are going to be good and the people I think aren't going to be good, and we vote, and sometimes the ones I like get hired, and sometimes they don't, and usually I'm right, but I've been wrong enough both ways over the years that I no longer think that no matter how strong my own personal judgment feels on something, that it's infallible, and sometimes you get it wrong and it turns out better, and sometimes you get it wrong, it turns out worse, and you have to be a little more humble, I think.
Yeah. I've twice voted one on a two-term president voted for the man and then voted against him, or the other way around. I voted against Carter in '76 and for him in '80. I'm like the only person. And then I also, that's crazy, but I also voted against Bush in 2000 and for Bush in 2004. So I
guess
mean,
I'd
you
be
can
the
change
same.
your view
I voted,
of the person.
Yeah. I voted Libertarian in 2000. I voted for Harry Brown. I don't know if that counts as voting against Bush or not. I don't know.
That's against Bush, yeah.
I mean, not in the sense that you're voting for somebody who's going to beat Bush, but yeah, but I've only actually voted twice for somebody who won, and one was Clinton in '92, and then I voted for Harry Brown again in '96, and then for Bush in 2004. And, I was glad my guy won, but life wasn't all beer and Skittles afterward as a result of that. So I guess I've just, that's how it is.
There's a price to pay when your person wins. When your person doesn't win, you're free to think, you're free to object to everything. You can express yourself. So if your guy lost, you have all of this to do. When your person wins, then you may be disillusioned, or he's not going to do everything you want. But I want to get back to the subject of the first black president.
Right.
I was impressed by, and what struck me last night was at the point when he won, all the commentators were and all the news headlines were instantly, first black president. It's this historic moment. We've got the first black president. And it was funny to me because before then, and through the whole campaign and leading up to it, it was much more about this particular man, this particular individual, Obama, and what was he? What did we know about him? And what would he do? And he didn't talk about race. He presented himself as beyond race. I mean, we could see that he was black, although there were early on some issues about how black was he and so forth.
Yeah.
But basically, he was presenting himself as, a particular individual who could represent all of us. And in the end, I made my judgment on him based on him. I could see that it would be exciting and great symbolically to have the first black president, but I felt that, you don't just do affirmative action for president. You have to have this person as president. You have to really be for him, or he's got to be better than the other guy at least. And I thought that that's the way we've been talking about it through the debates and through the campaign. And then at the point when he got the victory, suddenly he wasn't Barack Obama, the particular individual. He was the first black president, and everybody wanted to talk about that and the symbolism of that. And that I was a little bit taken aback by that. I mean, I understand it, but I was also a little taken aback by that because I'd gotten used to thinking of him as Barack Obama, not the first black president.
Well, I think that, I think it would be, I think it's just absurd to say that a large part of his appeal to a good chunk of voters, both black and white voters, wasn't in fact that he would be a black president, that he was somebody who was a black politician, not in the Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, grievance monger mode.
Right.
That he was somebody who was sort of not threatening in that way, and that people felt that this would be a big step. And I think, a fair amount of the media's in the tank support for him was just because they didn't want more Republicans, and they were actually in the tank for Kerry, whom the press didn't even particularly like. But another part of it, I think, was that they liked the feeling of being part of history, and that, electing the first black president was a big deal for history, and to them the thought that he would run and not be elected was just too depressing a story. It had to have a fairy tale ending. It had to have, all those people partying in Grant Park. That was the only way the story was permitted to end, and I think that's driven a lot of it. So people may not have talked about it, but I think that's always been sort of, on the front burner from day one. Now the question is, will it be once he's president? I mean, will his voters say, sort of get the catharsis, now we've elected a black president, now we just treat him like any other president? Or will they say, now that we've elected our first black president, he can't be allowed to fail?
He can't fail, yeah.
I
look forward to getting to the point where we can treat him like everybody else and criticize him, and, he's got to perform. He's not going to get, special treatment. I mean, he's a unique individual in the world with more power than anyone. He's got to be criticized. We've got to get over that.
Well, I hope so. I mean, I think, Jackie Robinson may have been the first black Major League Baseball player, but people didn't just pitch him slow, soft ones right over the plate, because of that.
And that would be patronizing. But
exactly. So we'll see how the press deals with it. I think it'll be interesting.
I think especially the way McCain kind of turned awfully ugly toward the end. I really wish McCain hadn't stooped to some of the attacks that his campaign made, and that with the attacks that I think were designed to make some people feel twinges of racial feelings against Obama, that if Obama had actually turned out to lose, that we would have had to talk about that for the next 100 years. It would never end. Why did he lose? You know, where was the racism? And the fact that he won saves us from having to have that conversation. I'm very grateful for that. And it would have been McCain's fault for not keeping it on the up and up. So that was a point against McCain.
I'm sure that would have been the story if Obama had lost. I think that's right.
I'm glad we don't have to do that. You know,
of course,
go ahead.
Do we call people sexist now because Sarah Palin lost? Are we going to have that discussion, or are we going to just let that one slide?
Well, and also Hillary lost. I mean,
that's right.
Yeah,
double sexism.
What an exciting campaign it's been to follow with all of this race and gender stuff and everything else going on. Such great characters, all of them, really. It's been really swell, and it'll be swell blogging the Obama's presidency, and also I assume Palin will run for 2012. It'll be fun to blog that. Oh, but you know, on the subject of race, I wanted to raise something that McCain said in his concession speech last night. On this, and this refers to race. I think he doesn't directly say it, but he said, "Let there be no reason now for any American to fail to cherish their citizenship in this, the greatest nation on earth." Oh, I noticed you put that on your blog too, that quote. I put it up and you put it up. And I think that what he was saying, don't you agree, was basically, you know, black people have had their gripes for a long time, but now that Barack Obama is president, you got to get past that. That complaining time is over, and now you have to just join the general citizenry and see yourself the same as everybody else. Do you think McCain was? Do you think that's what McCain meant? And don't you think that was overreaching? It's sort of like, all right, now you got the black president. No more complaining about race, everybody.
I don't think he meant it quite that baldly, and I think he was referring more really to the kind of catharsis we were talking about,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that. You know, I think it's a big step. And Megan McArdle said something sort of similar on her blog. I think it was actually the day before yesterday, but she said, you know, sort of mission accomplished. She said, you know, all these people have grown up thinking that a black man can't be president, and now, you know, whatever happens in the election tomorrow, it's clear that, in fact, a black man can be president. And that's a major shift in our society, and something that's worth noting in its own sake. And I think that's what he tried to get. I have to say, I thought the high point of the campaign in terms of rhetoric was, in fact, McCain's concession speech and Obama's acceptance speech. I thought those were,
they were both,
you know, it really, both of them were really, really good, and it ended on a really, really positive note from both parties, and I hope that will do a little good. I mean, I don't mind you. I don't want to come across as some sort of Pollyanna here, as I'm often accused of. I don't mind if people go after each other hammer and tongs politically. That's what politics is.
Yeah.
Politics ain't beanbag.
Yeah.
But it does seem to me that we've had a fairly poisonous political atmosphere for quite a while.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between sort of going at it hammer and tongs politically and a poisonous atmosphere. So we'll see.
You know, I was very interested I listen to Rush Limbaugh all the time. I don't know if you do. I mean, I voted for Obama, but ever since...
I was supposed to listen to him today. You assigned me to listen to him before this, and I forgot.
I forgot, but then I quickly went on and I was listening to what he was saying today because, you know, I've been listening to him all year. I subscribe to his website, and I download the shows, and when I'm walking home, I listen to what he said. So I always listen to the show, and although I think in the last month or so, he's ever since the economic stuff hit, I think he hasn't been so good. But the little bit that I caught today, I think he was saying what I expected him to say, which is he was attacking McCain for saying and Obama for saying let's have this bipartisan unity, let's all feel good and make nice, and he was saying I don't want to make nice, I don't want unity. And so what he is about is something that I actually regard as constructive, which is defining what the conservative position is and standing up for it, not just going along and letting them do the other side do everything that they want. That's that is a disservice, really. You need an opposition party, you need the pushback, and what we've lacked and what McCain failed to be is a well-defined conservative position.
That's right. He ran sort of his Democrat light.
Yeah, I mean, he was all over the place. He was more liberal than Obama on some places. I never understood what he was trying to do with mortgages. That upset me. The idea that Obama was accused of socialism when the Bush administration was doing what it was with the financial crisis, and McCain was planning to bail people out of their individual mortgages, the people who had gotten in, who had taken loans that they shouldn't have taken, that those people and were going to get the money, and the people who had behaved responsibly weren't. I didn't understand how any of that was conservative. So I think I actually agree with Rush Limbaugh on this, that there's a level of kind of anger and passion and partisanship that isn't the derangement syndrome, that actually is good. It's about getting definition.
You don't want everything to sort of collapse into one big gooey bubble. That's comfortable for the participants, but it's bad. Well, one thing I'll say for Limbaugh on that, and I think it's the secret to his success is, and I think it's been a hard election for him because he really didn't like Obama, but face it, the guy's always hated McCain, so it's got to have just been painful for him, and I think it showed. But generally what Limbaugh brings to the table that only a few other people in talk radio do is he always basically sounds like he's having fun.
Yes. Yeah.
He sounds happy.
Yeah.
You turn on Hannity, and Hannity just sounds angry a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas when you turn on Limbaugh, he almost always sounds like he's just having a great time doing what he's doing.
Right?
Life is good, right?
So doesn't he always say having more fun than a human being should be allowed to have? And he also always defines conservatism in terms of optimism. He goes back to Ronald Reagan, that's what Ronald Reagan did, and that it's about optimism. So he does put it in a very positive way. Even when he sounds angry and he's saying very negative things, it comes across in this spirited, sort of happy way. That's a little... that's a formula that obviously works very well, but I really like that about.
I think actually that's what McCain lacked. I think when McCain did try to go on the attack, and actually I see this in law students sometimes. Maybe you do too sometimes. When you see people who are a little uncomfortable about being aggressive, they often actually come across as harsher because it's like they have to give themselves that extra push to get it out, and as a result, they come across as harsher and sort of angrier than they really are. And I think when McCain was trying to go on the attack that way, he just wasn't being true to himself.
Yeah.
I think actually what the Republicans ought to look for in a candidate is the sort of happy warrior type, right?
Palin.
I mean, that is what works.
That was Palin. That's Palin.
That's right. And there is a big move among a lot of the sort of Republican punditocracy to sort of pin the loss on Sarah Palin because that means none of it's their fault, But I mean, I'm sorry. I think that if you look, the only time McCain was in the lead during the general election was shortly after he named Sarah Palin, before the economic thing knocked him off.
Right.
She was the one drawing big crowds. She was drawing bigger crowds than McCain was drawing.
Yeah.
And if you just ask yourself, would he have done better with Mike Huckabee? Would he have done better with Mitt Romney?
I could like to see him with Mitt Romney. But I think you could say that the attacks on Palin hurt. But if the attacks on Palin hurt, it was because McCain made the choice to choose her when he did, and maybe she wasn't ready. But if she had started running a campaign for president on her own, rather than being suddenly elevated to VP in a way that some people thought was cynical, then she would have had the time to gain the seasoning and get the advice and to define herself in her own terms rather than in connection with McCain. And she really could have done it. So I think that if she now eases into the new campaign and has people working with her and develops her policies so she knows what she's talking about all the time, then she won't be caught short and she won't be in this sudden glare of the spotlight. And her natural political skills and this sort of joyous, Limbaugh-ish attitude can really shine. I think that could really work. I think
that's right. I mean, I think when she was floated initially, my take on her, in fact, was, it's interesting. I don't think she's ready, which is what I also said about Bobby Jindal. Of course, Bobby Jindal's only 37, and has been governor, I think, I guess the same amount of time. But it's really. I thought that they used her wrongly, and I think this was McCain's weakness has always been he cared too much what the press said about him, and rather than putting her on Charlie Gibson and Katie Couric, they should have sent her around to the local affiliates in all kinds of states, especially swing states, to do interviews with a local anchorman. And when Charlie Gibson and Katie Couric said, "Why don't you send her to us?" The response should have been, "You mean you don't have confidence in your own affiliates to do a good job of journalism?" And and I would have put her on Rush Limbaugh, who I'm sure would have been happy to have her.
She did go on.
Eventually, but I'm talking about like the very first week. I mean, I would have brought her out. I wouldn't have wasted a bit of time on the sort of big media outlets. I would have done local TV and talk radio and let her go around until she sort of got used to the thing. Because running for president is hard, and spooling up to that from a standing start is just that. I mean, very few people can do it.
So the blame doesn't belong on her. It belongs on the people who thought they could use her at the point when they did and to handle it the way they did. So, I think she can come back and should come back, and I'd like to see that. Oh, can I ask one more question? I know that you need to go, but I wanted to ask one more question. Back to this subject of the law prof president, which I'm so interested in is... And don't you think it will be better? I assume we're going to get a Supreme Court vacancy or two or three, and at least maybe two, but maybe three. And I actually think it will be much better for the country having Obama appoint the next two Supreme Court justices, considering who's likely to retire, than McCain. I don't think McCain was particularly interested or knowledgeable in legal issues or in the court. And I think, the pendulum needs to swing back and forth, and it's time for the liberals to get some people, to get a chance to retire for the older ones, and to get some new people in who really represent the good liberal perspective on constitutional law and who are appointed by someone who's not just being told who to appoint by other people, but who's really capable of thinking in a smart, deep way on the subject and putting some great people on the court. Not mediocrities, but some really good people.
Who do you think he'll pick? I keep hearing Harold Coe is the inside favorite for the first pick, and that gets mixed reviews, as you might imagine. I've also even heard Steve Carter mentioned, which would be a thinking outside the box pick, I'm not so sure I see.
Well, I think that if Ruth Bader Ginsburg retires, there has to have no women on the court. There has to be a woman on the court. I think it's very hard not to appoint women. So who are the women?
Elena Kagan?
Yeah.
Or, I don't know. I haven't seen a short list for Obama. I just know what I've had people mention to me in talking. I'm sure he doesn't know either.
He may surprise us with some choices.
Do you think he'll pick another law professor? I mean, are we going to have rule by law professors, and sort of fill all the important slots with law professors now?
I don't know that law... Well, we haven't had a good law professor Supreme Court justice in a while, have we? Or they all do a little
Breyer.
Scalia. Yeah, I like Breyer.
And Breyer.
What I would most like to see is to get a couple, at least one, really crisply strong liberal on the court. I just don't think we have anyone on the court like that anymore, and that there needs to be an array of different kinds of voices on the court coming together to make a decision. And I don't like these continued sort of compromised, middle of the road sort of people. I think that there should be someone sharp on the liberal side. Don't you
think Larry Tribe's too old?
Oh, well, it's got to be... Well, first of all, I think it's got to be... I think the women and the minorities are going to have the edge, right?
Okay.
And I also think somebody young, so it might be someone we're just not thinking about at all.
Harold Coe? Sounds like Harold Coe to me.
Oh, okay. Well, we should put up a poll, take some bets there, and so on.
There you go.
Anyway, so we hit our target of 40 minutes. Is there anything else you would like to say about the election, or...
I just think that I'm glad it's over. And
so, what are you looking forward to? Here's a question: what are you looking forward to blogging? I mean, it's going to be. I mean, it's sort of like we have been so on track with this election for years. Are we going to just go right into 2012, or is there going to be this mellow period of talking about pop culture and all sorts of miscellaneous junk?
I hope to.
Or what are we going to do?
I hope to cut. I'm going to throttle back on the politics as much as I can. I mean, there's still going to be a lot to write about, so I'm going to be writing about it. But I have. I actually, for a while, until the last week or so, it just became unsustainable. I actually tried to set aside the middle of the day for non-political stuff, and I crammed all my sort of tech blogging and car blogging and recipe blogging into the middle of the day to make a little bit of an island of peace and quiet. And I'm going to try to expand that out a little more now, but we'll see.
Yeah, this idea of formulas. I mean, I sometimes try to put. I try to put photographs in, or sometimes I'll put up a photograph and then make it a place where people can comment and hang out and raise their own subjects. You don't have comments. You were considering putting comments on, but I know that you have a theory where you sort of see the whole blogosphere as the commentariat, and you send people off of your blog, which we appreciate very much. But it's kind of cool to develop your own sort of crowd of commenters. I know you read my comments sometimes, because sometimes you link to my actual comments.
I've even occasionally commented in there, though I try not to do that too much.
But it's,
I've been running the polls, and the polls also have their own little comment section, so that does give people a little bit of a place to talk.
Yeah.
But
that is the way to
I don't think I'm going to start opening up comments. I don't have time and energy to police them, and
it takes a lot
I find
of time.
that there's always the risk people attribute to you what some bozo said in comment number 274. So
You
I
could
just rather
hire
not
someone
get
to
there.
do it for you. I bet a law student would love to have that job.
I don't know that I'm old school. I do all this myself. So the notion of hiring somebody to do it just doesn't seem right.
Well, your blog you must have more than 10 times as much traffic as I do. Yeah, more. But I get a lot of comments. I get hundreds of comments on some posts, and I do go through and check, and I have to delete certain types of people who will really ruin things, but I let things kind of go really wild. I have some, I don't know if you noticed some of my characters, I have some people who are just completely filthy.
Yes, I have. I absolutely have.
I find it pretty amusing, but I mean, it's sort of like, well, am I a law professor blogger? Is this a sort of part of my law professing that I'm doing this? And if so, how can I allow those people to run wild on my territory? But I do it, on the subject of other things to blog, there is the thing, law, and I do make an effort to do a certain amount of law blogging. I don't ever blog about something I'm not interested in, but as I'm casting my net around, I often go to the law things. And for example, they were talking about dirty words in the Supreme Court yesterday. They were actually talking about Paris Hilton in the Supreme Court yesterday. Yeah. But I can tell by the number of comments that I get which are the posts that are really attracting people. And whenever I put up a post about the Supreme Court, I'll get like 10 comments. And if I put up a post about politics or sex or some other subject like that, I could get hundreds of comments. You're constantly getting, if you have comments, getting a read on what people want to think about and talk about, and it's really not usually law.
It really is. Well, I have gotten a couple of law review articles out of blog posts. I had one that I did on that Dick Cheney as vice president and legislator kerfuffle, and that actually turned into a piece that was in the Northwestern Law Review.
Oh yeah.
So that was sort of cool. Yeah. And then that turned into a New York Times op-ed. So that's getting a lot of mileage out of a blog post.
So even if people don't read it that much, you still are sort of staking out some ideas, developing some ideas. It's like a sketchbook for your future longer articles or things like that. Do you find that there's a danger that by writing a blog that and the kind of reading that you do to get your blog posts and to put it together, that your brain actually becomes restructured and it's hard to think of anything in the long form anymore, that everything is just a wave that you ride at a particular moment and then it's gone and it's over and you're just living in a different form?
I typically write shorter law review articles anyway, and I always have. One of my scholarly role models was Charles Black, who was known for being pithy.
Yeah.
And I sort of have done my best over the years to emulate that. And I had a lot of really pretty short pieces.
Yeah.
I had one called Chaos in the Court that was in Columbia that was like 9 pages long. But so maybe I was blogging before I had a blog. But I do see what I do is I have a separate computer that I use only for writing law review articles and books and stuff like that, that I don't blog on and I don't browse on.
You don't even have a browser on it.
Well, I have a browser on it. I just don't generally use it. I just, the rule is when I'm sitting at that computer, my mind has to be focused on sort of the long-term big stuff. And the rest of the time, if I write a column or if I'm writing, a magazine thing or something relatively short, it actually helps to be flipping around and blogging, and I like to be in a busy place like a cafe. For shorter stuff, that's actually better. But when you have to really sort of load a whole bunch of stuff into RAM, into your brain, then you have to do without the distractions, or at least I do.
Yeah, we need some tips about before blogging, I was also very interested in developing the essay form in law reviews and writing short things, writing innovative things in different ways. And I wrote a few things like that, including an article called something like "What's the Matter with Law Reviews?" and blaming not the students, which is what a lot of people like to do. It's those terrible law review editors. I blamed the professors for the way they were writing articles, for not revealing their thoughts in a clearer, crisper way, and for writing in a certain style. And I was trying to promote this idea of essay writing, personal essay writing, in the more sort of a creative kind of a law review writing. And now I look back on it and think that was really kind of absurd to think that those kinds of things would change. I mean, law reviews, I think, need to be law reviews, but I feel like I was
really
always waiting for this chance to blog.
I think it actually has changed some. I mean, I think that the shorter articles are more stylish now. A lot of law reviews have the shorter sections and the online sections, and I think that's really good. But on the topic of brevity, I think I'm going to have to wind up because I've actually got to get ready to do another TV thing.
Yeah, I gotta get ready for my con law class. I'm actually teaching affirmative action today, which I think is a little bit ironic.
That should be fun.
Okay. Well, it was great to talk to you.
Thanks. It's fun. These are always fun.
Thanks for coming on Blogging Heads. Bye-bye.
Thank you.